Hi friends, once again welcome back. Hope you all are fine and safe at home. Are you enjoying your classes? I hope so. Right. Now in our previous classes of this unit, what we had seen, your two prose parts. The first one was Project Tiger, and the second one, My Sister Choose, the script. These two we already did. And you know that what is next? Usually after prose, he used to get a poem, but this time it's not poem, it is a song. Exactly, an album song. Do you know what is an album song? Yes, I can say that album song, which is something different from the normal poem. What is the difference between a poem and a song? A poem is more expressive and it is readable very easily, and there is no musical element generally in a poem. But in a song, which is written basically for the purpose of music, enjoyment, and the song here you are going to study is Blowing in the Wind. You know who is the writer? Yes, it is Bob Dylan, a world famous American musician, lyricist, and artist. Of course, well-known composer. Let us see the profile of Bob Dylan from this video clip.
Bob Dylan. His birth name was Robert Allen Zimmerman. He is a famous singer and songwriter. He is born in Duluth, Minnesota, United States, on May 24, 1941. His father's name was Abram Zimmerman, and mother's name was Beatrice. He loved music from a young age and spent hours listening to the radio. He attended Hibbing High School and as a student played with many bands. He enrolled at the University of Minnesota in 1959. While in university, he started performing at coffee houses and became active in the Dinkytown folk music circuit. He changed his name to Bob Dylan when he started performing. After quitting college in 1960, he went to New York City in 1961 in order to pursue a career in music. He started playing at clubs and explored the music scenario. His eponymous debut album, Bob Dylan, was released in 1962. The next album he released, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, 1963, became a big hit in both the United States and the United Kingdom. Over the 1960s, he became immensely popular both as a songwriter and a singer. One of his biggest hits, the single, Like a Rolling Stone, was released in 1965, which peaked at #1 in the United Kingdom charts. He married Sarah Lowndes on November 1965 and had 4 children with her. He also adopted Sarah's daughter from a previous relationship, Maria. In the 1970s, he ventured into films and starred in the 1973 Western drama Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. His 1975 album Blood on the Tracks is considered to be one of his greatest albums. The couple divorced on June 29, 1977. He embarked on a year-long world tour in 1978, in which he was accompanied by an 8-piece band and 3 backing singers. He performed concerts in Japan, Europe and the United States, giving a total of 114 shows. This tour earned him more than $20 million. The album Slow Train, coming out in 1979, peaked at number 1 in Australia. Over the 1980s, he took to touring more and often collaborated with other musicians and bands. He toured extensively with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers during 1986-87. He formed a relationship with the singer Carolyn Dennis, which resulted in the birth of a daughter. He married Carolyn on June 4, 1986. Some of his biggest albums of the period include Infidels, 1983, Knocked Out Loaded, 1986, and No Mercy, 1989. He continued performing throughout the 1990s, though he was no longer one of the top musicians. But he surprised his dissenters by producing the album Time Out of Mind in 1997, which went on to win 3 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year award. Their marriage ended in divorce on October 1992. Ever the music lover, he still keeps active and released the album Tempest in 2012. His album Blonde on Blonde was one of his first major hits. It peaked at number 9 on the Billboard 200 chart in the United States and number 3 in the United Kingdom. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award of the United States, in May 2012. Bob Dylan won the 2016 Nobel Prize in Literature for having created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition. Take care of all your memories, for you cannot relive them, said.
Wow, what a versatile musician he is. Yes. See, Bob Dylan, he gave importance for civil rights movement. Do you know what is civil rights movement? Yes, it was a great event happened in the United States of America, the USA. Even though there was centuries old the American independence and racial issues. Since America got independence, or the colonies, British colonies, you studied in history, you know. They got independence, they were British colonies, and later there was a civil war among the white people. So many of them supported, some of the states supported slavery, that is the black people, they have to remain as slave workers for the white people. And some other states, they wanted to stop. You know that the greatest leader, greatest president of USA, Abraham Lincoln, who took initiative to stop slavery. Legally he banned slavery and there was a civil war and it was over. But what happened even in the 20th century, in 1960s, again the black people, they agitated. അവര് കറുത്ത വംശജരായ ആൾക്കാർ വീണ്ടും അവരുടെ അവകാശങ്ങൾക്ക് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് പോരാടാൻ തുടങ്ങി. അവയാണ് നമ്മൾ സിവിൽ റൈറ്റ്സ് മൂവ്മെന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. എന്താണ് സിവിൽ റൈറ്റ്സ് മൂവ്മെന്റ്? ഈ ഒരു വീഡിയോ ക്ലിപ്പ്
I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the history of the American Civil Rights Movement. The end of the American Civil War in 1865 effectively meant the end of slavery. But African Americans were in for a long struggle before they were finally awarded equal rights. As of 1870, all eligible male citizens were able to vote. However, blacks were discouraged to by violence and eventually legal stipulations. In 1896, the Supreme Court ruled to maintain racial segregation in private businesses in a case called Plessy v. Ferguson. Soon broadened to include schools, many southern states applied this separate but equal mentality to all aspects of life. However, this led to the application of Jim Crow laws, which resulted in blacks being treated as second-class citizens. Segregated schools, public transit, restrooms, water fountains, and more continued well into the 1900s. In 1909, a group of prominent black and white campaigners created the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. Their goal was to increase racial equality and challenge issues like the Jim Crow laws. Unfortunately, it was between 1910 and 1930 that white supremacist group the Ku Klux Klan saw its biggest expansion amid increased racial friction. Following the First World War, the NAACP was devoted to ending lynching by white vigilantes. By mid-century, the group became instrumental in the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka court case. This class action suit, filed in 1951, asked that segregation in schools be struck down. Taken to the Supreme Court, the case resulted in the first integrated school in the United States to open in the fall of 1955. Encouraged by the decision, the civil rights movement began to hold high-profile boycotts, marches, sit-ins, and other peaceful protests. These included 1955's Montgomery bus boycott in support of Rosa Parks. A watershed moment came in 1957 when a high school in Arkansas admitted a group of African American students, nicknamed the Little Rock Nine. Protested by fellow students, the governor, and even the state's National Guard, President Dwight Eisenhower eventually intervened to ensure the students' safe passage. By 1962, universities also began integrating, though black students were still met with protests and violence. The Southern Freedom Movement continued into the 60s, with support from newly elected President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. The violence of the Birmingham, Alabama campaign influenced the president to fully endorse the movement.
A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all.
On June 19, 1963, he proposed a civil rights bill to Congress, which was approved in 1964 after his death with support from President Lyndon Johnson. The bill struck down existing legislation that allowed for discrimination, and its approval was largely influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington of August 1963.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Capturing the attention of the media and the population, this event attracted hundreds of thousands of people in support of civil rights. Following that, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ended the prejudiced voting system. Instantly effective, blacks began voting and running for public office. However, just days later, on August 11th, a violent six-day riot in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Watts resulted in 34 deaths. This was indicative of a period of racially motivated violence that occurred in the mid to late 1960s. This era also saw the rise of Black Power, led in large part by Stokely Carmichael, in opposition to extremists like the Ku Klux Klan. This ideology was exemplified by the Black Panther Party, which followed the principles set forth by Malcolm X. Rising to prominence in the 1950s, his radical ideas advocated militancy for blacks.
Black people are dissatisfied. They're dissatisfied not only with the white man, but they're dissatisfied with these Negroes who have been sitting around here posing as leaders and spokesmen for black people and actually making the problem worse instead of making the problem better.
He remained an influential and controversial human rights activist until his assassination in 1965. The murders of civil rights leaders continued when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in April 1968 and Robert Kennedy 2 months later. Despite racial tensions continuing into the 1990s, progress has been measurable. The election of President Barack Obama in 2008 is seen by many to be a culmination of centuries of work in favor of racial equality.
This is the meaning of our liberty and our creed, why men and women and children of every race and every faith can join in celebration across this magnificent mall, and why a man whose father less than 60 years ago might not have been served at a local restaurant can now stand before you to take a most sacred oath.
Have you seen these clips? Yes. The black people or non-white people, including Indians or local or red Indians or red Americans, especially black origin people or black Africans, they started to fight for, or they started to speak against discrimination in the name of color. Even in your previous classes in 8th or 9th, especially in the 9th class, Rosa was standing, a person, a black lady who was not giving seat, as even the driver was requesting to give the seat and all, but she was not giving because she took the ticket, she was sitting and she was jailed later. It was also an example for civil rights movement. Now, before going to see the song, let us see there are hardly some 4 words which may be difficult or new for you. Let us see those difficult words.
Canon. A complete assembly, consisting of an artillery tube and a breech mechanism, firing mechanism or base cap, which is a component of a gun, howitzer or mortar. It may include muzzle appendages.
Pretend. Verb. To claim, to allege, especially when falsely or as a form of deliberate deception.
Blow. Blue. Blow synonyms: base, strike, hit, punch, disaster, calamity. Ban. To summon, call out. To anathematus, pronounce an ecclesiastical curse upon, place under a ban.
Have you seen those difficult words? The meaning you got, isn't it? Good. Now, we are going to enjoy the song, the original song composed by Bob Dylan. Now from this clip, you let us see the textbook as well, and you just see and watch and enjoy this video. Open the textbook, please.
Yes, and how many seas must the white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is a blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years must a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times must a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is a blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he can really see the sky? Yes, and how many years must one man have before he can hear a people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is a blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Now, have you enjoyed the song of Bob Dylan? Yes, definitely you have enjoyed. See, students, what is the importance of this civil rights movement this year, 2020? Let us see this clip. Okay, have you seen that? This is the picture of a white police officer who has been sitting on a black person, and you know that this picture, it had created a lot of troubles, not only in America but also throughout the world. It happened in the month of July this year, which became political unrest in America and all. The same black people, even most of them had put case against the government or the white people and all for against the discrimination. They gave it the civil rights movement, the importance of civil rights movement once again this year, 2020. It became not only a headache for our present President Donald Trump, even that had reflected in the election of the US in the recent. Now, these events give importance of this song, right? Now let us see the summary of this song. See, you can see this song in two contexts. Every stanza of this song starts first with rhetoric questions. So, and after those questions, rhetoric questions. What is rhetoric? Confusing or by far or lengthy, without any reply and all, thinking or confusing certain ideas. At the same time, he gives a single reply for the same first rhetoric questions of all those 6 lines. Every stanza has got 6 lines, but the answer is blowing in wind. The answer is in the blowing wind. Let us analyze every stanza of this poem. Here we take only the first stanza. Now in the first stanza, the first 6 lines, as I told you, what are the rhetoric questions coming? How many roads and how long the dove has to sail? What is the symbol of these rhetoric questions? As you know that the roads are the experience or the journeys or sufferings of human beings. And it is also the symbol of war as well. And the term you can see that cannonballs. Cannonballs are like little or huge bombs with metal and which is falling or which has been used during the war. And now, what about dove? വെള്ളപ്രാവല്ലേ മലയാളത്തിൽ നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നത്. What is the symbol of this white dove? It is a symbol of peace. You know that here Bob Dylan uses it in the background of biblical chords. As Noah in the Bible, they were moving over their ark, and Noah had sent the dove to find out the land. For many years they were in the midst of floods. Similarly here in this stanza we can see that very clearly, that human sufferings, wars, everything is miserable always for humanity. And how long we have to wait for the peace? And the answer the poet gives, singer Bob Dylan or the speaker, he gives that it is in the blowing wind. Just like the wind is moving, and in the wind itself there is an answer. That is the peace. That means humanity or human beings have to recognize that the answer is within their hand, within their breath. That is the blowing wind. Now, we will come to certain questions of this first stanza and the introduction. I'll give you those questions, including the profile of Bob Dylan. You take down and complete it. Right. Have you taken all those notes? Good. You read once again the song, your textbook, and write and practice the profile of Bob Dylan. And those remaining questions you read once again. And we will come back the next part, the next time. Till then, see you. Goodbye. Take care.